Every DevOps team out there is laser-focused on keeping their own systems up and running. But what if I told you that the single biggest threat to your ability to ship software isn't actually in your infrastructure at all? Let's dive in and uncover this massive blind spot that could bring your entire team to a grinding halt.
So on one hand, you've got the obsession, right? Kubernetes, containers, self-healing infrastructure. This is where we pour all our time and energy, building resilience. But on the other hand, there's this huge blind spot, the everyday SaaS tools we totally depend on. I mean, be honest, when was the last time you thought about a real failover plan for GitHub or Jira? That's where the real, unmanaged risk is hiding in plain sight.
So let's be super clear about what the problem is here. When a tool like GitHub goes down, your entire delivery pipeline just freezes. I mean, it's dead in the water. No code commits, no CI/CD, no deployments. When Jira's out, sprint planning just stops. Your whole workflow is suddenly at the complete mercy of a third-party vendor.
And here's the really wild part. It's the fundamental difference in control. With your own Kubernetes cluster, you've got metrics, you've got logs, you've got failover strategies. But with your SaaS tools, you get a status page. That's it. You have absolutely zero visibility into their operations, and most importantly, no power to fail over to a backup. You just wait.
Now, this lack of control isn't just some minor inconvenience. Oh no, it has a very real and very high cost. So let's look at the numbers, because they really tell a story of a major financial and productivity disaster just waiting to happen. Just look at this number. For a big company, a single hour of downtime for a tool like GitHub can cost between $1 and $5 million in lost productivity. That is an absolutely astonishing figure for something we often just treat like a utility. And even for smaller companies, you're still talking hundreds of thousands of dollars an hour.
And you might think, okay, but these are rare events, right? Not at all. We're not talking about some black swan event that might happen once a decade. Just this year alone, these critical SaaS platforms have reported hundreds of separate incidents. It's a constant low-level drumbeat of disruption.
And when you start adding up all those so-called minor incidents, the scale just becomes staggering. We're talking about thousands of collective hours where development teams were slowed down or completely blocked. This isn't some hypothetical risk, it's a chronic, ongoing problem that's hitting your bottom line.
So, if the risk is this high, and the outages are this frequent, why is this such a common blind spot? How can brilliant engineering teams who obsess over their own uptime just completely overlook the fragility of the tools they use every single minute of the day?
Well, the answer really comes down to a fundamental misunderstanding. It's an illusion, really, created by this thing we call the shared responsibility model. You know the idea. The vendor handles the uptime, and we just handle our data on top of it. It sounds great, it makes us feel safe, but for DevOps tools, that model is dangerously misleading.
Okay, let's get real for a second. In practice, the vendor controls literally everything that matters. They control availability, you have zero visibility into what they're doing, and like we said, you have absolutely no way to fail over their service. The responsibility isn't really shared at all. It's entirely on them. But the risk? The risk is 100% on you.
Let's bring this home for a second. Ask yourself, honestly, does your team have independent, actually accessible backups of your Git history? Is there a written, tested plan for what to do when your source control is down for 3 hours on a Tuesday? Are your CI/CD logs and artifacts stored somewhere you can still get to them? For most teams, the brutally honest answer is no.
Okay, so that was the scary part. But the good news is you can actually do something about it. Look, you can't get rid of your reliance on these SaaS tools, but you can absolutely build a more resilient system that's prepared for when they fail. Let's talk about how.
First off, this requires a little mindset shift. This is not about paranoia or being a doomsday prepper. It's about smart, practical engineering. It's about accepting the reality that outages are inevitable and that our job is to contain the damage, to minimize that blast radius when they happen. And this is a brilliantly simple 3-step plan to get you started. Step 1, your Git backup strategy. Mirror your repos. Don't just trust GitHub, sync them to GitLab or even a self-hosted instance. 2, have CI/CD alternatives ready. Think secondary runners and cache your artifacts externally in something like S3. And third, and this is probably the most important, create and test documented runbooks. Know exactly what you're going to do when a specific tool goes down. So, where does all this leave us? Well, with a pretty simple and kind of sobering realization. Your Kubernetes cluster is probably way more resilient than the tools you use to deploy to it. That's completely backward. So the final takeaway is this. Stop ignoring this critical dependency and start building a real plan. So I'm going to leave you with this one thought. These outages are going to happen. It is not an if, it is a when. So the only real question you and your team need to answer is, will you be ready? Thanks so much for watching.